One plane, one bomb, one blinding flash, and in an instant, humanity crossed a threshold it could never return from. The city of Hiroshima vanished beneath a mushroom cloud. The age of total war had ended, and the atomic age had begun. From the ashes of global destruction, one nation emerged with power unlike any before it: industrial, military, and moral. This is the story of how the United States stepped out of the chaos of World War II and into the center of a new world order. This is the dawn of the American century. In 1945, the world was exhausted. Over 50 million lives had been lost. Cities, from Warsaw to Manila, from Dresden to Tokyo, lay in ruins. Empires that had once ruled continents were shattered. Britain was bankrupt. France was humiliated. Germany was carved apart. And in Asia, Japan lay broken beneath American occupation. The United States, however, stood untouched. Its economy was booming. Its industries were unmatched. America now produced half of the world's goods and owned 2/3 of its gold reserves. Yet the victory brought questions, not just of power, but of purpose. At the Yalta Conference earlier that year, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin had met to shape the post-war world. They spoke of cooperation, of peace built on trust. But beneath the smiles, mistrust ran deep. The Soviet Union wanted security, a buffer of friendly governments in Eastern Europe. The United States wanted democracy, open markets, self-determination, freedom. When Roosevelt died in April 1945, his successor, Harry S. Truman, inherited both victory and uncertainty. At the Potsdam Conference that summer, Truman met Stalin face to face. He mentioned a new, devastating weapon, the atomic bomb, believing it would strengthen America's hand. Instead, it deepened Stalin's suspicion. By the war's end, two great powers stood on opposite sides of ideology, geography, and vision. The alliance that had defeated fascism was now fraying into something far colder. In 1946, former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill delivered a speech in Fulton, Missouri. He warned that an iron curtain had descended across Europe.
From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent.
To the west, freedom and democracy. To the east, tyranny and control. The world was dividing again, not by trenches, but by ideology. The first major test came in 1947. Two ancient nations, Greece and Turkey, found themselves at the center of the storm. Communist movements threatened to destabilize both, and Britain, weakened by war, could no longer afford to intervene. So, President Truman stepped forward. In a speech before Congress, he declared, "I believe it must be the policy of the United States to support free peoples who are resisting subjugation by armed minorities or outside pressures.
I believe that it must be the policy of the United States to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressure."
This became known as the Truman Doctrine. It was more than foreign policy. It was a declaration of leadership. The United States would now stand as the defender of freedom around the world. And with that, the Cold War had begun in earnest. Soon after came the Marshall Plan, proposed by Secretary of State George C. Marshall in June 1947. It was a bold and unprecedented idea. America would pour billions of dollars into rebuilding Western Europe, not as charity, but as strategy. Factories were rebuilt, farms revived, currencies stabilized, and with each shipment of food and steel, American influence grew. It wasn't just economic recovery, it was a battle for hearts and minds. But not everyone saw it that way. In Moscow, Stalin viewed the plan as a weapon, an attempt to lure Eastern Europe away from Soviet control. In response, he tightened his grip, creating his own sphere of influence and crushing opposition wherever it appeared. Meanwhile, in Washington, the fear of communist expansion began to shape every decision. The U.S. National Security Council was formed. The Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, took shape, operating in the shadows to protect American interests abroad. A new world order was forming, divided by fear, fueled by ideology. By 1948, tensions had reached a boiling point. In Germany, the Allies had merged their occupied zones to rebuild the nation's economy, but Berlin, deep inside Soviet-controlled territory, remained divided among four powers. In June, the Soviets made their move. They blocked all road and rail access to West Berlin, cutting off 2 million residents from food and fuel. It was a direct challenge and a dangerous one. The Western Allies could have retreated. Instead, they took to the skies. For nearly a year, American and British planes carried out the Berlin airlift, delivering supplies every few minutes, day and night, of flour, coal, medicine, more than 2 million tons in total. Children in Berlin watched as raisin bombers dropped candy parachutes from the sky. It was one of the greatest humanitarian efforts in history, and it proved that America would not back down. In May 1949, Stalin lifted the blockade. The West had won, but at a cost. Germany was now divided permanently into East and West. Europe itself had become the front line of the Cold War. Later that same year, two more shocks would change everything. In August, the Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb, far earlier than American scientists had expected. The monopoly of power was over, and in October, half a world away, Mao Zedong declared the birth of the People's Republic of China. The most populous nation on earth had turned communist. To many in Washington, it felt like the world was closing in. The Cold War demanded new institutions, both visible and secret. In 1947, the Department of Defense was created, uniting the Army, Navy, and newly independent Air Force under one command. The Pentagon became the nerve center of American power. In 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, was born. 12 nations joined together in a military alliance built on a simple promise. An attack on one would be considered an attack on all. For the first time in its history, the United States had entered a permanent peacetime alliance. Isolationism was over. America had become the leader and guardian of the Western world. At home, prosperity boomed. Factories that once built bombers now built cars. Suburbs expanded. Highways stretched across the land. Soldiers returned home and started families. The baby boom began. Yet beneath the prosperity, fear lingered. The Soviet threat seemed everywhere, in newspapers, in classrooms, even in Hollywood. Senator Joseph McCarthy rose to fame by claiming communists had infiltrated the government. Loyalty oaths, blacklists, and investigations swept the nation. Science, too, became a battlefield. Nuclear technology promised progress, atomic energy, medicine, power, but also the specter of annihilation. In this paradox lay the essence of the age: hope and fear, progress and peril, intertwined. Between 1945 and 1949, the United States did more than win a war. It defined the peace. It built alliances, rebuilt economies, and reimagined the global order. The American flag flew not only as a symbol of victory, but of vision, a belief that freedom and prosperity could shape the future. Yet the dawn of the American century was both brilliant and blinding. It promised peace through strength, but revealed the shadows ahead: the nuclear arms race, the proxy wars, the ideological divisions that would define the next half-century. Still, in those early years, there was a sense of purpose, that the sacrifices of the past could give birth to a better world. And though the century that followed would be marked by conflict and contradiction, one truth remained. From the ruins of 1945, America rose, not just as a nation, but as an idea. The dawn of the American century had begun.